Welcome, learners. My name is Mr. Paul Chilola once again. Welcome to our revision sessions. Today we have the opportunity to lay our hands on the biology paper 1 from SHED. SHED is short for Shire Highlands Education Division. Schools from Mulanje District, Harombe District, Chilazuru, and Tyol districts wrote this paper during their 2026 mock exams. So it pleases us here at Black Slides to look into the paper together with you. Right, so let's be together up to the end as we take you through the paper. This is one of the best papers I've seen this term, this season. The question paper is rich in exam style questions, very good questions of manageable standard. Give so much respect to the teachers who took their time to come up with this paper. Very beautiful paper, I must say. Welcome to Black Slides. Without much talking, let me take you through the paper right away. Define the term oxygen debt. We shall define the term oxygen debt as simply the extra oxygen, amount of oxygen that must be taken in by the body after exercise to break down the accumulated lactic acid and restore energy reserves as well as normal metabolic conditions. So after extraneous exercise such as running, playing soccer, or any other game, including weightlifting, squats, push-ups, and many other activities you can carry out, there comes a time when your body respires anaerobically to produce lactic acid in your muscles. So this lactic acid must be broken down to glucose, which should be used to make more energy. All right, so in order for us to convert lactic acid into glucose, which is going to be respired aerobically, we need extra oxygen to breathe in. So that extra oxygen is called oxygen debt. Below is the chemical equation of a certain reaction, chemical reaction, that occurs in the human cell. Use it to answer the questions that follow. You must know species, chemical species, formulae of compounds when they appear in a chemical reaction. This is a chemical equation for a process called aerobic respiration. So glucose reacts with oxygen gas to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The question is, mention part of the cell in which the process occurs. So this process occurs in the part of the cell called mitochondria. 1 mark. We can also allow mitochondrion, which is just a plural of mitochondrion. Mitochondria. Mitochondria is plural for mitochondrion. So whether you say mitochondrion or mitochondria, it is still okay. You get 1 mark. State any 3 ways, I'm sure this must be ways, in which the produced energy is utilized. To utilize means to use. So this energy is used in a number of ways in the body. One of them is for muscle contraction and movement. So muscles in the arm, such as the biceps and triceps muscles, muscles of the heart, muscles in the leg as you walk, require energy. So this energy is produced during aerobic respiration. You can also use this energy for growth and cell division. Growth, remember, growth is the permanent increase in size of the body. It results from cell division, mitosis to be specific. It requires energy. So this energy is produced during aerobic respiration. It also helps in maintaining body temperature. This energy, in most cases, is heat energy, helping to maintain the internal body environment, including temperature. Remember that the human body is supposed to be at an internal temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. So to maintain the temperature, energy is needed, and such energy is produced during aerobic respiration. Some of the energy is used for active transport of substances across cell membranes. Remember, active transport is simply the movement of substances from their region of low concentration to the region of high concentration against a concentration gradient. So to push substances from where there are few to where there are many of them, you need a pump. So that pump is energy from respiration for active transport. The energy is also used for the synthesis. Synthesis means for the building up of complex molecules in the body, such as proteins and hormones. For molecules such as proteins, hormones, enzymes, and many others to be built up, including glycogen, you need energy to do that. In the absence of such energy, which is produced during aerobic respiration, it may not occur. These processes may not occur, and the organism cannot survive. No organism, not human, can survive without these processes. So we need this energy. These are just some examples from which you are supposed to pick 2. So I would urge you as the 2026 MSCE candidates to know all these so that you can give any 2 welcome learners. This is Black Slides Online Secondary School. Through you, Black Slides has now been made a YouTube partner. It's because of you learners. We are now an official YouTube partner. This is an achievement for the school as well as for you, learners. Question number 2. Figure below shows a plant response to a stimulus. Remember that a stimulus is just a change. The change in the conditions, the change in the surroundings of an organism. So the organism we are looking at here is a plant. In the diagram, we are told this is a polar spot. This is a polar spot. Polar means having pores or holes. So it's a pot on which holes are made. It's sunken into the soil, dry soil. So when water is poured into the pot, some of the water would migrate. There's more water in the pot than in the soil. So water is going to diffuse to the outer parts of the pot, this pot, through the hose. In the course of that, the plant is going to grow towards the water. Especially the root part. The shoot will grow upwards in pursuit of light through phototropism. But the root is going to grow towards the water. Remember, the growth response towards water is what is called hydrotropism. So there are two tropisms here that are going to occur, but the major one we are considering here is the response towards water, which is called hydrotropism. The shoot will follow the direction of light through phototropism. But the root, as you see, is bending, is growing towards moisture, the water. A process called hydrotropism. Welcome, learners. And this is a transparent container. I'm sure the container is made transparent so that it's easy for us to observe the changes taking place inside, including seeing that the soil is getting moist and also being able to observe the growth response of the plant, of the roots towards the water. Identify the stimulus in the above illustration. Stimulus. So the stimulus is the change in the environment of the organism, in this case of the plant. So the stimulus must be moisture, presence of moisture. You can say moisture or water. It's one and the same. Don't say hydrotropism, because the hydrotropism is the response, the growth response of the root towards the moisture surrounding the pot, the moisture of the soil. All right, so here we are simply interested in what change has taken place here. So the response is hydrotropism. The stimulus is the presence of moisture or water. Welcome, learners. We are so thankful to you, because through you, Black Slides is now a YouTube partner. This is a journey of many attempts or efforts from the Black Slides team, as well as you, the students. We are so happy Our achievement is also your achievement. So we are grateful to you. Explain one importance of the above response. So the response we said is hydrotropism. This is the same as asking you to explain the importance of hydrotropism. So the growth response towards moisture of the roots by in the setup there is hydrotropism. So the question is asking us to explain one importance of hydrotropism. The importance is to the plant. So it is the plant that's going to benefit by the end of the day. So it helps roots grow towards water. So the plant absorbs water and minerals needed for growth and survival. 2 marks. As saying it helps roots grow towards water. 1 mark. So the plant absorbs water and minerals needed for growth and survival. Another mark. That's why it's 2 marks here. Welcome our students wherever you are. Explain how nastic responses occur in Mimosa pudica plant. Recall that nastic response is response of an organism to touch. And such a response is seen and observed in plants called Mimosa pudica. Mimosa pudica are the plants, very tiny plants, which when you touch the leaves of Mimosa pudica, the leaves seem to shrink or to move. They appear to move in response to the touch, nastic touch. Nastic means touch, nastic response. So plants seem to move. Mimosa pudica plants seem to move. So the question is, explain how they do that. Mimosa plants are very common in Mulanje. In Mulanje, there's a place called Mimosa. The place was named Mimosa because of a plant called Mimosa pudica. There are tiny, tiny plants there that when you touch, they seem to move or to shrink. When given more time, they will return back to their original shape. The leaves turn back to their original shapes. Such movement is called nastic response. Nastic means having to do with touch. So it's a touch response or response to touch. So how does that happen? All right, so touch causes touch on the Mimosa pudica plant. When you touch them, the cells in the pivnus is below, the cells below the leaves lose water. When they lose water, they also lose what is called Tagger pressure. Remember that Tagger pressure is pressure or the force that develops in the plant cells when the cells are full of water. When cells are full of water, they have Tagger pressure. So when you touch the cell, touch the leaves, the plant, Mimosa pudica plant, it will cause cells in the pivnus below the leaves to lose water and Tagger pressure. As a result, you know what happens when cells lose water? They become flaccid, meaning they become soft and weak. This makes the leaves fold, which is called elastic response. So water is going to return later and the leaves open again. 2 marks. Welcome, learners. So the 2 marks will come from you saying, when you touch the Mimosa pudica plant, the cells in the pivnus, which is the lower part of the leaves, will lose water and turgor pressure, causing the cells to become flaccid. This makes them to fold. And later on, water is going to return to the pivnus, the lower part of the leaf, and the leaves open again. They'll return to normal shape. Explain any 2 functional differences between the brain and the spinal cord. 4 marks. So 2 functional differences, the difference between brain and spinal cord in terms of their function or functions. The brain controls voluntary actions and the conscious thought. Voluntary actions are actions that you do at will, such as lifting your arm, nodding your head, deciding to walk, and many other things that your body can do at the control of your brain. So the brain controls those actions and the activities that you carry out consciously at will. The spinal cord controls only reflex actions. Reflex actions are the actions your body parts carry out without deciding to do them, without will to do so. So the spinal cord controls reflex actions and relays impulses or signals. So the first difference is to do with the kinds of actions each one of them carries out. So the brain controls voluntary actions. The spinal cord controls involuntary actions, which are also called reflex actions. So 2 marks. 1 mark for saying what the brain is capable of doing, and the other mark is spinal cord, what the spinal cord does in terms of their functions. Another difference is to do with interpretation of information. The brain interprets information and makes decisions. So the decisions, the choices you make are done by the brain. On the other hand, the spinal cord coordinates fast responses without the input of the brain, without the brain commanding it to do something. So make sure you know all these. And also take note that each has 2 parts. Each part is 1 mark. So for example, here, the brain controls voluntary actions and conscious thought, 1 mark. The spinal cord controls a reflex. If you don't want to say reflex actions, you can say involuntary actions, apart from relaying messages. Brain interprets information and makes decisions, 1 mark. The spinal cord connects fast responses without brain input. State any two importance of vaccine. Remember, vaccine is just an introduction of the antibodies, usually passive antibodies, in order to induce the release, to induce the body to release its own antibodies. So we are called upon to state any two importance of vaccine, of a vaccine. A vaccine is meant to stimulate the body to make antibodies and memory cells for immunity. So when a vaccine is given, it's going to cause the body to start making its own antibodies and memory cells for immunity to fight an infection, stimulate the body to make antibodies and memory cells for immunity. It also prevents diseases. In the course of that, it also reduces infection spread and protect against severe illness. So two things. Make sure you know all of them. 1 mark for each. Welcome, candidates. Now we are calling you candidates. You have come from far. You have worked so hard. You are about to yield results. At the Black Slides Online, we wish you all the best. We can't stop to wish you all the best as you start your exams in 4 days' time. Welcome, learners. State any two adaptations of mammals for locomotion. Remember, mammals are the organisms that feed their young ones through milk. Mammals, like human beings, are mammals. Goats, cows, hyenas, cats, and many others, including us humans. So, what features enable us to move, to locomote, to move from one place to another? Remember, locomotion is active movement of an organism from one place to another. It's not just movement, it's change in location of an organism. Changing of location, moving from one place to another, the whole body moving. So what are the features the mammals have that help an organism, including you and me, to move from one place to another? State any two for 2 marks. So one of them is that they have strong rigid skeleton, mostly endoskeleton, that supports body weight and acts as levers for movement. Strong, rigid skeleton that supports body weight. In our case, we have legs, arms, and we have joints, levers in the arm to help with movement. So that's an adaptation, the fact that we have a strong rigid skeleton to support body weight. That also acts as levers for movement. That's one. We have limbs placed directly under the body for better balance and efficient striding, like walking. Limbs are things like legs. In case of animals such as goats and the cattle, they have four limbs, which are considered to be legs anyway. In the case of humans, we have two legs and two arms. These are placed directly under the body to provide better balance and efficient stride. Mammals have a well-developed powerful muscles attached to bones to pull and move limbs. Powerful muscles, the biceps muscles, triceps muscles, the muscles in the legs are attached to bones to bring about motion, locomotion. They have freely movable joints that allow a wide range of limb movements. So all these are adaptations of mammals for locomotion. So make sure you know all of them so that you can give any two in the exam. Below is a diagram of a stage of meiosis. So meiotic cell division. Use it to answer questions that follow. So this is a stage of meiosis. Remember, meiosis is a cell division involving sex cells, right? The eggs and the sperms. It's not mitosis. Mitosis has to do with ordinary cells, the cells in your muscles, the cells in your brain, normally known as the somatic cells. Those undergo a process called mitosis, but over here, we are told this is meiotic cell division, it's meiosis. Welcome, learners. What stage of meiosis is presented by the figure above? What stage of meiosis? So this stage of meiosis is metaphase. This is metaphase 1. How do we know that? During metaphase, the stage of meiosis, the homologous chromosome pairs, these are homologous chromosome pairs, are aligned along the equator, the center of the cell. They're also attached to spindle fibers. These are called spindle fibers, which is a characteristic of metaphase 1. Let me urge you to look at other stages, such as prophase, anaphase, and others, and their characteristics and how you can identify them in a diagram. Welcome, learners, to the platform. Subscribe to the channel and also invite your friends wherever they may be so that they can join us on this platform. Explain any two significances of meiosis. Any two. Meiosis has a number of significances. One of them, it maintains the constant diploid chromosome number. Half, diploid means half chromosome number in sexually reproducing organisms. In the case of humans, it maintains the number of chromosomes to 46. So the mother and the father contribute half that number of chromosomes, in this case 23 each, so that the offspring will have the required number of chromosomes of 46. So by producing haploid gametes containing half the number of chromosomes, that restore the correct number when fertilization occurs, so it maintains the constant diploid chromosome number in sexually reproducing organisms. This is done by producing half the number of chromosomes in the gametes in order to maintain the correct number when fertilization occurs, the correct number of chromosomes in the offspring. That's too much. It introduces genetic variation through crossing over and independent assortment of chromosomes, helping species adapt to changing environments. Importance of meiosis. Mention any two genes that determine blood groups in humans. Blood groups in humans are determined by the genes IA that produce antigen A and the IB that produces antigen B, but also a recessive gene which does not contain any which does not produce any antigens. That's blood group or gene IO. I here stands for isoagglutination, isoagglutinogen, which refers to the gene that controls the production of antigens in the red blood cells, which determines the ABO blood group system. So these are the genes. So you can mention any two of these as the question demands. Welcome, learners. Progesterone performs a function X. The follicle-stimulating hormone performs the function Y. So what is X? What function is X and what function is Y? In other words, we are asked during the menstrual cycle, what is the function of the progesterone? And what is the function of the follicle-stimulating hormone? So progesterone is used to maintain and thicken the lining of the endometrium, preventing further menstruation. So it also inhibits production of follicle-stimulating hormone. So we can state any function maintaining and thickening the lining of the endometrium, the wall, the uterus, preventing menstruation, further menstruation once it has occurred. This happens mainly when pregnancy has developed, right? So it maintains and thickens the lining of the uterus during pregnancy. It also prevents menstruation during pregnancy. It as well inhibits production of follicle-stimulating hormone. So the follicle-stimulating hormone stimulates and the growth and the maturation of an ovarian follicle. It also helps the ovaries to produce estrogen, the follicle-stimulating hormone. Describe what happens in the menstrual cycle on day number 1. The first day of your menstrual cycle, or the menstrual cycle, involves the thickening or the breaking down and shedding of the thickened lining of the uterus. This is called endometriosis, endometriosis, something like that. But for now, just call it breaking down of the endometrium. Endometrium is the walls of the uterus. So it breaks down and is shed, is released along with blood and the unfertilized egg. So this is called menstruation. So the breaking down of the walls of the uterus and the shedding of the blood thereof, together with the unfertilized egg, is called menstruation. In case you're asked to define what menstruation is, it's the breaking down and shedding of the thickened lining of the uterus, endometrium, together with blood and the unfertilized egg. That's called menstruation. All right. So the actual menstruation happens on day number 1. Remember that the cycle is for 28 days. So on day number 1, there is menstruation. On day number 14. Day number 14 is a danger day. It is the day when ovulation happens. That's midway through the cycle. Day number 14, which is half of 28 days. So this is when the egg is released, a mature egg is released from the Graafian follicle, the ovary, and moves into the fallopian tube. Such that if one has sexual intercourse on this day, as well as the following day, is day number 15 or 16, fertilization will occur, leading to pregnancy. Welcome, learners. So day number 14 is when the ovary produces egg, which is also called an ovum. Welcome, learners. We have a situation question here. Mr. and Mrs. Piri are individuals with normal black skin. Okay, a married couple. To their surprise, they have given birth to a child with albinism. Albinism is a condition whereby one's skin does not produce melanin, the pigment responsible for skin color. So use this information to answer the questions that follow. Explain the cause of the above genetic disorder. What causes this? Normal parents producing or giving birth to a child with albinism. Explain the cause of the above genetic disorder. So this disorder, in most cases, is caused by a recessive gene mutation, the mutation of a recessive gene. All right. So both parents are carriers, meaning they are heterozygous. And they each carry one normal dominant allele and one recessive allele for albinism, so that the recessive alleles from both parents will produce an offspring with albinism. So both parents are basically carriers, they're heterozygous, meaning they have a normal gene and an abnormal gene. So the abnormal genes will pair up to produce an offspring, a child, with albinism. What name is given to a service that could be provided to the couple to understand their situation? In order for the parents to understand their situation, they should be given a service which is called okay. Here we are still explaining the cause of the albinism in the child. So the child inherits two copies of the recessive allele, one from each parent, which means the body cannot produce a pigment, melanin, resulting in albinism. So 2 marks, 1 mark for each of the steps. Said, be fair enough, this question could have been 3 marks because there are 3 points raised here. What name is given to a service that could be provided to the couple to understand their situation? So these parents could be given genetic counseling. Remember, during genetic counseling, an expert explains to the couple, to the married couple, their situation and to welcome its consequences. So the parents must meet a genetic engineer or expert to have their condition explained in order to prepare them psychologically. Otherwise, there will be a psychological problem if the parents don't understand what's going on, why they were normal people, but they have produced an albino child. In form of nitrates. So plants get nitrogen in form of nitrates or ammonium ions, which are dissolved in water, soil water. Animals get nitrogen in form of proteins or amino acids through feeding on plants or other animals. So when animals eat plants and the other animals, they get proteins from it. Explain how the following affect the distribution of organisms in an ecosystem. Explain how the following affects the distribution of soil. How does soil affect the distribution of organisms in an ecosystem? So soil type would affect the distribution of organisms in an ecosystem. Soil type and texture. Sandy soil drains fast. You know that sand soil does not hold water for a long time. It holds few nutrients, while clay holds water but has poor aeration. But loam soil is best for plant growth. So plants will grow in a soil that is loamy, containing soil nutrients and mineral salts, support life. Another one is soil pH. Soil pH and fertility. Acidic alkaline conditions limit which plants can grow in it, but nutrient-rich soil supports more vegetation, which in turn supports more animals. But acidic and alkaline conditions will not contain plants, and therefore it cannot support animals in an ecosystem. Water and soil content. Water and air content. Well aerated moist soil supports plant roots and decomposers, while waterlogged or dry soil limits survival of plants and animals in the soil. We are looking at how soil affects the distribution of organisms in an ecosystem. Sorry about that. Temperature. How does temperature affect the distribution of plants and animals in an ecosystem? Temperature affects the rate of metabolic processes or body reactions and enzyme activity in the organisms. So each species has an optimal temperature range, the best temperature range for which metabolic processes will take place. Too low temperature slows growth, reproduction, while too high temperatures denatures enzymes. And as a result of that, it will also affect the distribution of animals or plants in an ecosystem. So this determines which species can survive and reproduce in a given area. Temperature. That's how temperature affects the distribution of organisms in an ecosystem. Describe the depletion of ozone layer as an effect of air pollution. The depletion of ozone layer as an effect of air pollution involves the use of pollutants such as chlorofluorocarbons or CFCs. So pollutants like CFCs rise into the atmosphere and break down the ozone molecules. This, as a result, will reduce the ozone layer, allowing more harmful UV radiation to reach the Earth. And this, as a result, will affect life on the Earth. In other words, it will affect quality of air. Explain the function of tonsils as lymphatic organs. Tonsils. These are things, some swellings that develop when one has an infection. They occur under the jaws. They can also occur under the arms. Tonsils. To explain the function of tonsils as lymphatic organs. So the tonsils, when they occur, trap and filter bacteria, viruses, and the other pathogens entering through the mouth and nose. Mainly these are the ones that are under the jaws. So they produce white blood cells and antibodies to fight infection and trigger an immune response. So two marks. So they trap and filter bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens entering through the mouth and the nose, producing white blood cells and antibodies to fight infection and trigger an immune response. Describe the following conditions associated with the circulatory system. Varicose veins. Varicose veins refers to a condition where the valves inside the veins become weak or damaged, causing blood to flow backwards and pool. Right, so when the valves in the veins are weak or damaged, blood will flow back. Remember, the use of valves is to prevent backflow of blood. So the condition where the valves inside the veins become weak or damaged is called varicose veins. All right. So this makes the veins stretch, swell, and they become enlarged, twisted, and visible, usually in the legs. Have you seen some people with light skin? When you look at them in the legs, you find that they seem to have some kind of colored veins, bluish veins, like like strings under their skin. If you have seen such people, that's a condition. It's called varicose veins. So it's a condition where the valves inside the veins become weak or damaged, causing blood to flow backwards and pool and accumulate somewhere. So this makes the veins stretch, swell, and become enlarged, twisted, and visible. You can actually see the veins. They appear to be strings, blue strings under their skin in the leg. So you wonder what that is. It's a condition called varicose veins. There's another condition known as arteriosclerosis. Arteriosclerosis, arterios, arteriosclerosis is simply a condition whereby the elasticity of artery walls is lost when the artery walls are hardened and thickened. So it is the hardening, thickening, and loss of elasticity of artery walls due to buildup of fatty deposits, which is called the cholesterol inside them. So this condition is not a good one. It narrows the arteries, it makes the arteries narrow, reducing blood flow and increases blood pressure, raising the risk of heart disease or stroke. That's called arteriosclerosis. Take note of the spellings. So arteriosclerosis is the hardening, thickening, and loss of elasticity is the stretchability of the stretching ability to stretch over the artery walls. So thickening and loss of elasticity of artery walls due to the building up of fatty deposits, which is cholesterol inside them. So this narrows the arteries, reducing blood flow and increases blood pressure, raising the risk of heart disease or stroke. Welcome, learners. The part labeled B, you recall, B must be ureter. This is ureter. The tubes that empty the kidneys that deliver urine to the urinary bladder. Obviously, this is the urinary bladder, are called ureter. Please don't confuse ureter with urethra. Remember, urethra is the tube that empties the urinary bladder. When you are urinating, the urine passes from the urinary bladder through the urinary tract, which can be a penis or the ureter in females, urethra. So this is urethra down here, and this is ureter. This must be the urinary bladder. Remember, there are two bladders in the human body. There's urinary bladder and the gallbladder. So some confuse the gallbladder with the urinary bladder. Don't make such confusion. So let me ask you also to look at the kidney, the chain of the different parts, such as the nephrons, the glomerulus, The Bowman's cut shows the loop of Henle, the upper convoluted tubes, the distal convoluted tubes, and the like, including the urethra and urethra. So B is ureter, U-R-E-T-E-R. C is the urinary bladder. So just that. Explain how ADH. ADH is short for antidiuretic hormone, the hormone that is responsible for osmoregulation in the body, regulating the levels of water in the body. So explain how antidiuretic hormone ADH controls low water contents in blood when there is low water level in the blood. What is the role of ADH? So the hypothalamus, which is part of the brain, detects the change and signals the pituitary gland. When there is low water level in the blood, the hypothalamus is going to detect that level of water and it will signal the pituitary gland. It will send a message. It will inform the pituitary gland that there's low water. So the pituitary gland is going to release antidiuretic hormone ADH into the blood. Once in the blood, the ADH is going to increase the permeability of kidney tubules and the collecting ducts to water. It will make the kidney tubules and the collecting ducts permeable to water so that more water is reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, back from where? From the urine into the bloodstream. In so doing, the level of water is restored again. So this restores the normal blood water levels and it produces small amounts of concentrated urine. So 5.5 marks. Take note, learners. My name is Mr. Pochilola once again, representing Black Slides Online. We are so thankful to you, our subscribers, for bringing us to a level of a YouTube partner. This has been achieved through you and by you. Thank you very much. Number 9, figure below is a figure showing transverse section through a young root. Use it to answer the questions that follow. So we have a young root over here, which we have to use to answer the questions that follow. So just a quick look at this. We have this portion here in the middle of which there is this star looking structure, and then we have these circular paths together. Remember, this is called vascular bundle. So what tissues are represented by the letters X and Y? X is a structure, a tissue called the xylem. How do we know? Xylem is mostly star-like and is in the middle of the tissue. This is star-like. I think the one who drew this really tried, but there's also mispresentation on the shape. It's not really a star, but it has the shape of a star anyway. So that's xylem. and the Y is basically the phloem. How do we know? The phloem are just scattered around the xylem. That's how we know that this must be phloem. Welcome. Let us explain the function of part X in photosynthesis. In other words, what's the use of the xylem? The question can come directly asking you to explain the function of the xylem. So the xylem transports water, as you know, and dissolved mineral salts from the roots to the leaves. Remember, water is needed for photosynthesis. So it's a vehicle through which water, it's a vessel through which water is transported from the soil, from the roots to the leaves where photosynthesis occurs. So water is a key raw material required for the light stage of photosynthesis. Remember, the light stage is where the water is split into oxygen and hydrogen ions, and that's called photolysis. The hydrogen then combines with a carbon to produce sugars. Describe the carbon dioxide fixation in photosynthesis process. Carbon dioxide fixation, which is also called carbon sequestration, involves carbon dioxide joining with 5 carbon molecules to make an unstable 6 carbon compound. All right. So carbon dioxide joins with 5 carbon atoms to make an unstable 6 carbon compound. So the 5 carbon molecule um, plus the carbon from carbon dioxide makes an unstable 6 carbon compound. So this quickly breaks into 2 3 carbon molecules which are used to make glucose. So this is called carbon dioxide fixation. It occurs during photosynthesis. Mention the name of the hormone produced by the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland produces a hormone which is called thyroxine. Take note of the spelling. And the name of the gland gives a clue. Thyroid. Thyroid produces thyroxine. Let me urge you also to know the different glands in the body and the hormones that they produce, as well as go an extra mile to look at the function of each hormone. State the function of the hormone mentioned above. In other words, what's the function of thyroxine? Thyroxine controls the body's metabolic rate, such as respiration, the rate of respiration. It also regulates growth and development. That's why it is sometimes called growth hormone. It's one of the growth hormones. So it controls the body's metabolic rate, regulates growth and the development of an organism. Briefly explain how pancreas controls high level of glucose in the body, in the blood. The pancreas produces a hormone called insulin. So when blood glucose is high, the pancreas releases insulin. Right? So the insulin makes body cells absorb. It's like the insulin. The use of the insulin is to channel glucose to cells, or to knock at the cells to tell them to absorb more glucose. So the insulin makes body cells absorb more glucose, and the liver converts excess glucose into glycogen for storage. So this eventually is going to lower the blood sugar. So this lowers the glucose level back to normal, 3 max. Take note. Know the max, the points. First of all, so when blood glucose is high, the pancreas releases insulin. This of the insulin is to make blood body cells absorb more glucose, and the liver converts excess glucose into glycogen for storage. Remember that glycogen is stored in the liver. So in the process, this lowers the glucose level back to normal. Section B. Remember that a standard paper has 3 questions in section B, 11, 12, and 13. And each carries 10 marks to add to 30 marks. So answer all questions in this section. Answer questions. Your answers should be in an essay form. At least here there's an instruction. But in section A, we didn't have an instruction regarding what needs to be done there. Explain any 5 ways of preventing diseases at household level. This is a very popular essay question. Remember, when you're answering an essay question, you don't give an introduction, neither do you give a conclusion. Introduction or conclusion don't matter. You don't get marks for that. So just go straight to write down the point. And where you have 10 marks, usually each point has 2 parts, so that each part is 1 mark. So in a paragraph, make sure there are 2 points to give you 2 marks. And those 2 points must be related to one another or to each other. So here we are looking at household, preventing diseases at household level, at home. So the things that you need to do at home to prevent diseases include washing hands with soap and clean water before eating, after using the toilet, and after handling wastes to stop germs from spreading. So by saying, this is one paragraph complete in itself. So wash hands with soap and clean water before eating, using toilet, after using toilet, and after handling wastes to stop germs from spreading. That's 2 marks. Washing hands with soap and clean water before eating, after using the toilet, and after handling waste. That's 1 mark. Why? To stop germs from spreading. That's another mark. That's 2 marks. Cook food thoroughly. Store it properly. Separate raw and cooked food items and drink boiled or treated water to avoid foodborne illnesses. So by saying cook food thoroughly, store it properly, separate raw and cooked items, and drink boiled or treated water, that's 1 mark. Why? To avoid foodborne diseases. Foodborne illnesses are those illnesses or sicknesses that are transmitted by food, by ingesting food in the body. You may not have to write this quite long sentence. Just cook food properly or thoroughly to avoid foodborne illnesses. That's 2 marks. Sweep, mop, and wash utensils regularly. dispose of rubbish in covered bins, and drain stagnant water to remove breeding sites for pests and germs like mosquitoes. So sweeping, in other words, sanitation, must be excised at home level. Domestic means household. Household means at home. Welcome learners. Use clean latrines, toilets, and keep them disinfected so human waste does not contaminate water, soil, and food. To another 2 marks. Lastly, keep rooms well ventilated and let in sunlight, which kills germs and reduces the spread of airborne diseases. So this will give you 10 marks, 2 points for each paragraph. Remember that you don't number the paragraphs, just write them like that, the way they are here. Question number 11. Describe how insulin is formed through genetic engineering. This is insulin. Formation of insulin is an application of genetic engineering in biology. So the first thing that has to be done is that the human gene that codes for insulin is cut out from human DNA using restriction enzymes, one. And then a plasmid, which is a circular DNA, is removed from a bacterium and cut open with the same enzyme. Then the insulin gene is inserted into the plasmid and sealed using DNA ligase to form recombinant DNA. Then fourthly, this is done in order to modify plasmid. So the modified plasmid is put back into the bacterial cell. Once this is done, the bacterium is going to multiply rapidly and results producing and starts producing human insulin, which is then extracted and purified for use. Make sure you know all these steps. Please don't mix these steps up. It has to be logical like this. Actually, explain any 5 ways in which xerophytes reduce the rate of transpiration. Xerophytes are plants that grow in deserts, in places where there is insufficient water. These are plants that grow in places such as deserts. They are called xerophytes. These are desert living plants. So how do they reduce the rate of transpiration, the loss of water? Otherwise, they will die if they don't reduce the rate of water. Water loss would lead to death of the plant. All right, so explain any 5 ways in which xerophytes reduce rate of transpiration. 10 marks question. That means each point is 2 marks. So one of the features that xerophytes have is that they have a thick waxy cuticle that covers the, remember that the cuticle is a waterproof layer of the leaves. It's like plastic, all right? So they have a thick waxy cuticle that covers the leaf surface to prevent water loss through the epidermis. So the fact that they have a thick wax cuticle, 1 mark, to cover the leaf surface to prevent water loss through the epidermis, another mark, that's 2 marks. They have a sunken stomachs. Their stomachs are sunken, which trap moist air around them and lowers the rate of water vapor escaping. The fact that they have sunken stomachs, that's one mark, in order to trap moist air around them and lowers the rate of water vapor escaping. They have tiny leaves. This reduces the total surface area available for water loss. All right, tiny leaves reducing the total surface area available for water loss. Sorry about that. So their leaves are rolled or folded, keeping humidity high inside and reducing evaporation. Take note. So each point has 2 marks. And lastly, their leaves have fewer stomachs to limit the openings through which water can escape. So if you have all these points